So as we all get older, somewhere along the way we usually have to confront the reality that life's not going to turn out exactly how we might have imagined it would when we were all kids. We usually have to go through a process of realizing that life has a way of throwing us devastating blows that can be pretty difficult to overcome. That there's an infinite variety of ways that we can go through pain, sadness, and disappointments. So whether we're talking about the disappointments of romantic letdowns and breakups and all the heartache that comes with them, or if we're talking about the unexpected deaths of the people we love the most, or whether we're talking about how as we get older, almost all of us have to sit back and slowly watch the complete disintegration of our dreams. How most of us have to watch these ideas of ourselves change from being potential realities to unaccomplished fantasies. And even when we do succeed, accomplishing our goals is never as fulfilling as we thought it would be. And so with all of these catastrophes happening to us, we might start to think that at the base of it all, life is just suffering. We might find ourselves in the game of life thinking that the framework and rules have already been rigged to guarantee a steady and continual dose of suffering. And even though it's tough to admit, it is a pretty sound observation. And it's nothing new. I mean, it's something that a lot of ancient traditions have understood for thousands of years as well. Like in Buddhism, the first of the four noble truths is that life is dukkha, which loosely translates to life is suffering. So, because of that, we might think that our job as mature adults should be to just accept it, to get tough, to put on a superficial smile and figure out how to train ourselves to be a strong force that knows how to deal with this never-ending bombardment of suffering and pain. But this idea that life is suffering, well, it doesn't have to be the only truth we live with. After all, it's only the first of four noble truths. And it's only true if we let ourselves believe that there aren't more steps of growth and evolution that would let us see our suffering from a completely different perspective. What I mean is that no matter how unbearable our suffering might feel, it can always be outgrown or transcended with a shift and evolution of our perspective and of our consciousness. Now, this growth of consciousness isn't some abstract or complicated idea. It's actually something we've all been doing throughout our lives already. So, for example, just think about all the disappointments we went through when we were young kids and how small they seem to us today because we've outgrown them. I mean, if a child doesn't get what he wants in life, whether it's a toy, a sugary treat, or an extra hour of playtime, well, to a child, that disappointment can feel like the end of the world. He sulks, he throws a tantrum, he's pretty upset, he's suffering. And that's because in his framework of reality, within the narrow world of a child, that small disappointment can cause major suffering. But then as we get older and our perspectives grow, we start to see pretty clearly that not getting a toy or an ice cream just isn't that big of a deal. So it doesn't bother us anymore. We've developed a bigger understanding of the world that lets us put those childhood problems into proper context. And the beauty is that we can do that with our adult problems as well. All we need to do is to take that same growth of awareness that exposed how small and trivial our childhood problems were, but now apply it to our adult problems. So how do we go about doing that? How do we turn our adult suffering into child's play? Well, the first step is to realize that our perspective doesn't just stop evolving once we become adults. We can keep on expanding our understanding of reality and ourselves forever. And all it takes, all we have to do, is to keep on cultivating that curiosity for the nature of reality that most of us lose by the time we leave school. We have to do our best to keep that spark of wonder about the sheer miracle of being, the miracle of existence, and the wonder of the universe and our position within it. If we can keep even the smallest speck of that curiosity, it'll force us to ask the big questions about our lives. It'll force us to reach out further and down a road of discovery and realization that drastically expands our perspective. And when we do, our new perspective would take us way beyond the limits of our day-to-day experience of reality, way past the confines of our world and out into a cosmic and unified conscious reality where we start to recognize new truths that put our adult suffering into its proper perspective. I'm talking about new truths like the third noble truth, which is that enlightenment and expanding our awareness is the key to ending suffering. New truths like how the nature of reality is far more strange and wonderful than we could have ever imagined, that we're all part of one unified field of infinite consciousness, how we have the ability to travel throughout that field just from the portal of our mind. New truths like how death is an absolute illusion and that we actually live in all different forms and dimensions endlessly. Now, if we're able to realize some of these new truths, most of our day-to-day problems and suffering lose their weight very quickly. They lose their power over us because against the backdrop of our new world view, or better, our new cosmic view, well, against that backdrop, those problems are just like children's problems, small, insignificant, and not worth our suffering. So that should be it, right? Problem solved. No more suffering. Well, it's definitely a helpful way to put our suffering into perspective, but unfortunately it's only half the story. See, this cosmic perspective comes with a side effect that's not so helpful as well. It's a side effect that actually brings the whole idea crumbling down on itself. What I mean here is that the further our curiosity takes us, the deeper down the rabbit hole we go, and the more we take on this cosmic perspective, the more likely it is that we'll realize that it's not just our suffering that's small and insignificant, but that most, if not all, of what happens in the universe is small and insignificant as well. Pointless maybe, that it's all just one big cosmic joke, that nothing really matters and we're all just here having a human experience when there's an infinite number of other experiences we could be having too. That in life we can't really make any mistakes, we can't fail, and none of this thing we call life is really that serious. From the cosmic perspective, even if we destroy our planet, it's really not that big of a deal because at the end of the day, it's just one of billions of other planets in billions of other galaxies and billions of other galaxy clusters. So it probably wouldn't even make a ripple in the fabric of space-time if our world just went up in smoke. Now, there's obviously a problem with this outlook. Because if we only take into account how small and trivial everything is, if we only see this one side of the cosmic coin, it might help us deal with our suffering in the short term, but too much of anything is bad. And too much of a cosmic perspective is a one-way ticket to a deep-rooted feeling of meaninglessness, of insignificance. So we end up finding ourselves right back at square one, right back at suffering. So now what? I mean, how do we deal with this new layer of suffering? Well, as our curiosity takes us further and further, one of the cosmic truths that we'll stumble on is that the universe is all just one giant paradox. Everything is dual. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different only in degree. All truths are but half-truths, and so all paradoxes may be reconciled. So the paradox is that everything is and isn't simultaneously. Everything is both light and dark, large and small, both good and evil, all existing in harmony as one. So a more concrete example of this kind of a paradox would be the relative size of things. So if we ask, is a mountain big or small? Well, in comparison to an ant, a mountain is pretty huge, but in comparison to the Milky Way, then a mountain is unbelievably small. A mountain is both big and small, it's dual, it's a paradox, and so is everything in the universe. Let's take time for another example. Is 100 years of time a long period of time or a short period of time? Well, for a human life, it's a very long time, but if we compare it to the lifespan of our planet, then 100 years is a blink of an eye. So time is a paradox as well. In the novel Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche's main character Zarathustra really got this idea as well, and how midnight is also noonday, pain is also joy, a curse is also a blessing, the night is also a sun, a wise man is also a fool. All things are chained and entwined together. All things are in love. And so in this same dual and paradoxical way, everything in the universe is completely meaningless, but at the same time, deeply meaningful. So there's two sides to this one cosmic coin as well. So from the big picture, cosmic and objective side of the coin, everything seems meaningless because of the huge scale and infinite nature of the universe and how small our lives are in comparison. But then, simultaneously, on the other side of the cosmic coin, from the subjective perspective, everything is deeply meaningful because there's absolutely nothing that can take away the feeling we have when we hear our favorite song and dance the night away. When we have a heart-connecting conversation with our best friend, or when we look into the eyes of the person we love. There isn't enough information about the number of galaxies in the universe and how small we are in comparison that can take away the feeling we have when we watch our children learning to walk. So now the tables get turned. Because the big and infinite outer universe suddenly falls into the category of things that seem small and trivial when we compare them to the unbelievable depth of our inner world of feeling, friendship, passion, and love. So with the understanding that there's two sides to this cosmic coin, that everything is both meaningful and meaningless, we can now realize the fourth and final noble truth, which is simply walking the right path, the middle path between the two. Nisargadatta Maharaj managed to take this whole concept and poetically condense it into just 3 little sentences. Wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I am everything. Between the two, my life flows. And it's exactly that balance of significant insignificance that can free us from our suffering.